Hey everybody, this is Randall. You heard part of this interview on Beyond the Booth with Phil Harris, but we're splitting it into a couple of different interviews over a couple of weeks on Behind the Booth. But we wanted to go ahead and get the whole interview that Coach Medley allowed us to record today. And this is very important information. And I cannot tell you how critical, if you have a son that wants to kick or somebody in your family or team that wants to kick, this interview is very important for you to listen, learn. So I'm going to play it from the top and let it all play out. And we have a copy, and then you'll hear the second part again on Beyond the Booth next week. But let's go ahead and play the interview in its entirety.
Hey, it's good to be here. Good to be here to join and kind of talk about just anything and everything, a little bit on the careers and coaching in general. So kind of see where life has taken me, post college. And I think it was 6 years ago now. So time's flying by.
Well, my friend's son Isaac calls you coach. So if I may, I'm going to call you coach too, because anybody that coaches young people, you're investing your time and effort into that.
Oh, for sure. And I think for me, the reward is seeing some of these guys when they're starting out, like, 8th grade, 9th grade. And I've been around it long enough to see those guys start to excel, in the college ranks, wherever they end up. And so that's been really cool for me to kind of see the journey from the other perspective. And then also having going through it myself, giving them some advice and, how to approach some of the situations that they're in.
Well, looking back at UT, just a couple of quick questions that I come across. One, I wanted to ask you about the number 25. Did you wear that for a reason?
So, the James Wilhoit, who's a guy, and we've kind of become very close over the years. When I was probably, I want to say, end of my 8th grade year, that spring, I had met with him for the first time. We did one lesson, and I think I probably said 3 words the entire 2 hours. So it was, for me, it was just like this guy who, I had grown up just watching on TV, and, the name that came with it and everything. And so it was for me, it was just I don't even think I learned how to kick at all. I think I was just starstruck. But after that, I think that, everything that he had done for me, just through the recruiting process. And back then, what he has now is kind of night and day from the operation, he was running, when I was coming through, being one of his first clients. But, to me, it was somewhere to pay homage to him and really show that that brotherhood with, UT football. So, and that was kind of the big reason. Now, the interesting thing is at the time, he was the second all-time leading scorer. And I think my senior year, about halfway through, I actually passed him on the charts. That was a pretty cool moment. So it's Jeff Hall and then me and then James. So we'll see who the next guy is. But have to play all 4 years, so it's going to be hard to beat.
Every time I see someone dressed in 25 that's not kicking after you and James came through the university, I'm kind of like, something's wrong with this picture. I know we have a running back wearing 25 now. It's like our PlaceKicker should always be number 25.
Yeah. Well, when I played, Josh Smith, who was, kind of the Knoxville hometown guy, he also wore 25. And so, after games, I would get handed, photos of him and kids, asking me to sign it. And I'd have to tell them, that guy's back there. It's not me. But, no, it was a fun 4 years. Looking back, I think the amount of guys that I played with that are, ended up in the NFL and are going on, second and third contracts now. It's just really, really good to see, those guys kind of succeed and achieve their dream.
I spoke with Steve Hamer, who runs the Vol for Life. I guess he's involved with the Vol for Life, and he was talking about Coach Heupel and Danny White really reaching out through that program. Have you had the chance to talk to Coach Heupel or A.D. White about the program and get involved in any way with the program now?
So I haven't talked to the AD. He's probably running around pretty busy. But I will say that from around the moment that Heupel came in, it was pretty much an open invitation. And there's been a couple times where, I work in Knoxville sometimes now with my job. And so, after work, I just go hang out at the facility and, if they're all, walking by or whoever's there, it's always kind of been an open door policy. And, being a former player, I can really, really appreciate that. And there's been situations where it's just been me and Heupel, kind of one-on-one for about 10 minutes, just talking about, whatever. So that's been really good to see. He's very accessible. And I think that, getting grounded and not letting kind of some of the marketing stuff, it being UT and probably one of the biggest, schools from a marketing perspective, sometimes you can get caught up in that. But I think he's done a really good job of keeping kind of everybody focused on just playing football and playing good football at that. So that's been fun to see. And, now it's kind of fun to go back and, you see some of the teammates that you played with, and you're kind of just remembering stuff that, happened on the field or, in class or whatever. So it is a good feeling to get everybody back, and kind of join in and watch, the next group kind of achieve, and possibly do what we couldn't. So that's really good to see.
I love it. And I love, I'm an alumni too, and I love the former players being involved with the program, and it just adds so much to me. But, I could ask you 1,000 questions about your playing career, but what we're here to talk about, I think, is there's a lot of parents and a lot of people like me on the peripheral of high school football and middle school football that see kids struggle to kick. And I do play-by-play at Sequatchie County, and we had one kicker last year who got hurt, and we were literally on the soccer field auditioning people to kick. It is a lost art, and it's an art that's hard to find coaching if you don't go in the private sector. So tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got involved in that.
Sure. So, and I'll say this, the industry has changed a lot since probably the mid-2000s. To give kind of a general overview of the industry on the kicking side, for your national coaches, you've got Jamie Cole, Chris Saylor, so they kind of run your rankings. So they're not huge on instruction, but it's it's kind of going to validate yourself against some of the best guys in the country, and it's kind of almost like the PGA Tour, right? Where they just kind of go around. The best guys show up every week, and you kind of claim your spot. What we do is a little bit different. So we're primarily focused on the instruction and the actual training part. So we're going to make you better. We're going to get you, your research and development periods. We're going to get a little bit of competition, but most of what we want to do is be able to kind of shape and mold and over the course of 2 to 3 years, ideally, and give your best shot at, whatever potential you have, to go to college and possibly earn a scholarship. So back in 2009, I think, James started doing a little bit of private training. He didn't really know a whole lot as far as, the technique and stuff. He was just kind of basing everything of what he knew. But there was another guy that he went to get training at and then pursued the Arena Football League for a little bit, but was really, really good. Got to probably an NFL type level, just never got the opportunity. So then he decided to start, coaching, and now we've built this business up. I think he's going into his 14th or 15th year now, to where we're training about 150 guys across the state. And, we've got a senior training program where we've got 20 guys, and probably 18 to 19 of them are going to be playing college football, either as a preferred walk-on or full scholarship. So, what we've built, I would say rivals, as far as placement and end result, any group out there. Whether you've got, there's some in Atlanta, there's a few in Birmingham, I think there's one in North Carolina, and a few kind of scattered across the country. But it's a hard industry if it's not your main job, because you think about time and effort and the weekends and kind of everything that comes along with that, the travel. and especially, being in Nashville, like, the cost of living is up. It's going to be a spot where, and James has it, right on the money, where he's working at Wilhoit Academy, and having the field access and everything. So it works well. But I think that's kind of why you don't see a lot of coaches doing it, just because it's just very hard to get in and stay in those markets and actually make a name for yourself.
Yeah, I understand that the instructions that you're able to give, and we deal with it a lot, or I see it a lot. There's not a lot of really good kicking instruction outside the private industry. With you offering this, do you have kids that come that just say, I want to be a kicker, or I've been kicking for 2 years and I just know to hit the football?
Yeah, we kind of get all walks of life. We have some that are, hey, I'm just getting into sports in general, and I thought I'd start, kicking. We have others that were a really heavy soccer background that kind of realized, like, hey, I'm probably middle of the road as a soccer player, but I've got a really strong leg. Maybe I try kicking now, and we've seen that one work out. I was kind of an anomaly. I never played soccer. I kicked in the backyard for, since I was like a little kid, but just never really like pursued it. And then one day, we were, out in practice at Pop Warner, and somebody's like, well, we got to find somebody to kick off. And so the whole team, tried out, and, of course, by far, I was like the best one. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, I'm pretty good. So might as well pursue it. Right. So that's that, and sometimes you just never know. And I've got other kids that, day one, it's like, and you got a lot of work to do. And then by, year two, they're like, oh, they're actually pretty good. They picked it up.
Right.
And so that's always fun to see. But yeah, I think if you're somebody who's thinking about doing it, and, there's never really a wrong time to try out. But ideally it's 8th or 9th grade. And then just, continue to get in the weight room. And that's another thing that's changed a lot over probably the last 6-7 years is athletes are starting to become kickers, right? I think the mantra has always been, well, kickers are just kind of these squirrely, itty bitty guys who can just kick a ball a long way and they don't really do much. Well, that's changing. There's a lot of guys that I'm looking at, I'm like, man, I'm glad I'm not in your class, because you would run circles around me.
But even if I remember correctly, your leg was strong enough to get several offers even from the Big 12. So it was kind of a self-taught art for you at the time. Do you think you being self-taught helps you instruct now that you have a little more technique and strategy and kind of just the proper form in your career or in your training bag?
Yeah, I think that's, having done it, the way I teach guys is I teach them the way that I think, but I tell them, this is how I think about it, and this is how I go about it. Your way might be different, but what I want them to understand is the concept. So as long as they understand the concept, right, because I'm not going to be there every day at practice. I can't be in 1,000 places at once.
Right.
So if they understand the concept, in my mind, they should be able to kind of self-coach. And then once you get good enough, you almost want to, and this is kind of where I was, probably made a mistake, because I tried to self-coach too much. It's where I was kind of getting in my own head sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where you find your guy and you say, just kind of pull back and you just go do. But yeah, the mental game, the mental aspects, even in practice and games, that was something that I always took, a lot of analyzing to try to develop, a perfect system. And I feel like I got there. I feel like the 2018, when I was coming out for the draft, I think I probably went, month and a half, and, my kicking sessions were I just didn't miss. And it almost got really boring. And that's kind of where you want it to be, where when you get set, that ball's just already going in because you've done your homework, you've done your pre-check alignment, and you just know. So I tell guys all the time, if you can get to that point, that's when you know. But that takes a lot of reps. Takes a lot of repetitions, and you have to be very purposeful every day when you're going out to kick.
As one of the guys that sits in the stands that thinks every kick looks easy, a 40-yarder is a long ways even. And you think about Chase making the 40-yarder to beat Alabama. When I got onto the field and I looked at 40 yards, anybody that's getting over 35 or 40 yards has got a strong leg. Is that when they come to you? Do you already measure their range, or have how strong your leg is documented?
I think there's a fine line between exploding your hip and your leg through a ball and then trying to overkick. And I hate to use golf because I think that's like probably the closest analogy, but you want to be on balance. You want to be powerful. So you swing as hard as you can stay on balance. If you swing too hard and you're off balance, it's like, well, that's too hard. You need to back it off a bit and kind of build your way up. But yeah, I mean, I think the progression. Most guys when they start out, if they can strike a ball, usually 20, 25 yards, 30. By like 8th grade. Mm-hmm. Now, when you start getting into we've had some juniors hit 60. We've had some seniors hit 65, 70. So when that weight room and, kind of maturity starts to come along, that's when it can get really, really fun. But I mean, as far as if you're starting out, distance isn't a crucial thing. I think the biggest thing is just going to be learn how to strike a ball, learn how to leg lock, and then coming up through the ball, and get the fundamentals down before you really start trying to attack it.
So my friend's son, Isaac Smith, that's working with you, is a former soccer player or a current soccer player at a very high level. Is there habits that you have to break soccer players from when they enter the football realm?
Oh, God, yes, all the time. And I think from a coaching perspective, and I get it, you find these dual sport athletes where they're playing, football in the fall, and then soccer season comes, and they're doing the school soccer and then the travel soccer. It just kind of becomes this, which wolf do you want to feed? Do you want to feed the football guy or the soccer? So that's where, guys can kind of stunt their growth in the kicking element a little bit, but I get it. It's your time to be a kid. It's time to have fun. And I think just it's whatever you want to get out of it, right? Because whatever you put in, that's what you're going to get out. So I don't blame them at all. But the ones that do succeed, we start seeing them around sophomore, junior year start to just migrate to the football side, and then start adding a little bit more weight room to their regimen, and then that's when they explode, and then it's really good to see.
So I know it's a different, you made the golf analogy. I was going to say the same thing. Punters and kickers are, to me, the punter is the guy that can hit off the tee 300 yards, but the place kicker is the guy 150 in that can put his wedge wherever he needs it.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a difference in, I guess, good kickers don't always make good punters, and good punters don't always make kickers? Is that technique, or is that just what you've done repeatedly thousands of times?
So I would use the analogy of dancing, right? For punting, it's a lot like dancing. Some guys have it, and they got good moves, and they can just pick it up and go. And some guys look like they have two left feet, and they have to really work at it to develop the rhythm. I was kind of a guy that could dance a little bit. Not actual dance, but I could punt. I would kind of come across the ball a little bit, but I really had to train myself to walk straight, because the rotation of your hips when you're kicking is very different from the explosion up when you're punting. So kind of having two different swings.
Right.
If there's any golfers out there, it's kind of like hitting a fade and then trying to hit a draw back to back. Just two different swings, and if you can get it down, that's great. But I think that's why you don't see a lot of, especially in the NFL, a lot of kickers and punters doing both. So that's it. But yeah, I would say that it is more difficult to learn how to punt than it is to learn how to kick.
Interesting. I would have thought it would have been the other way around. But in our last few minutes, let's talk a little about your instructions. I know you move around, and you're at different places. And if a parent is listening to this interview and wants to get involved, and say they're in the Chattanooga area or the Knoxville area, explain how this works, or how you're in different areas to train.
Yeah, so we've actually got a really good system, and this has kind of been, like I said, over the course of 13 years, it's been kind of redeveloped. But basically, your timeline goes new client camp. So those are held usually in February, March, and April. And then we've got another one coming up in October, I believe. And we've got a link online. It's jameswilhoitkicking.com. And if you don't know how to spell Wilhoit, it's Wilhoit. So those are kind of your opportunities to get involved. We've also got summer camps, so those are open to new clients as well. But once you're a new client, the way that we like to see progression is we've got spring training programs. So those will be four times in the spring, so about once a month. And then we'd like to see you at a summer camp. And then your fall training is very light. So you're probably about once a month. We're not trying to kill your legs because you're in season, but we do want to keep you on the tracks, so to speak. And then probably about and that's if you're like a freshman or, 8th grader, even a sophomore. If you're a junior, it might be a little accelerated. So, you might come in as like a summer camp and then just go straight into some of the spring trainings. But I would say if you're a junior, go to a new client camp, and then you need to go to a Kohl's showcase. So that way you can get a ranking, kind of know like where you stand in recruiting, who else is above you, kind of give you an idea of what schools to be looking for. And we help with all that. So like that's kind of a full service. And that's one thing that I'm really proud of that we're able to kind of do now. Now that we've built kind of some of these recruiting connections with different schools across Tennessee, and then so a little bit in Kentucky, is adding go to a coach like, who do you need? Are you needing a punter for next year, or are you needing a kicker this year, or like who are you redshirting? So knowing that information can be valuable to say like to a group of guys like, hey, like this spot's open, go fight for it, right? And so that's so that we've seen a lot of success there this year. Doing that. So it's a good opportunity, but it only works if the client's willing to work. What we teach is tried and true, but we see a few guys that don't really put in the effort sometimes, and they're always middle of the road. Right. So yeah, but it's good. It's rewarding for sure. So if there's any parents out there that need to get or want to get involved, jameswilhoitkicking.com. And you can sign up right there on the links. So it's pretty easy, to be honest.
I will put that link on the website too, in case anyone wants to come and come to our website. It'll link it to you. I did not know about the that is a very full service. So, do you think smaller schools, Division II, Division III schools, I'm thinking of like Columbia and Maryville and stuff, they've got to have kickers too, and getting there, I think that would be a harder path for a coach to find a kicker to come to Cumberland University or Maryville. Are you involved with those type of coaches too?
Oh yeah, so like the school that comes to mind is Carson Newman, right. TSU. A lot of the smaller schools, like those are the people that we probably have the best connections with, just because it's so hard to recruit. Because a lot of times their recruiting budgets are very, very small. But if we can have, a short list of like 5 or 6 guys that say, hey, these guys would be a really good fit, it just helps them out that much more. And I don't think I think we do a really good job of not playing favorites. Like I said, it's a very unbiased representation. So, and I think that's what the coaches want. I think that's what the players want too. To know that we're giving them a fair shot, that it's their job to go out and earn it.
Absolutely. Last question, Coach, and we'll wrap up for the day. I wanted to ask you, we've talked about the physical and you've talked about the next level. What about the mental preparation of a kicker? How much time do you spend working with your students? Just you're on the sideline, you've got to make a kick, because to me it seems like a huge part of the kicking game.
It is, but I also think that's developed over a long period of time. I think we spent some time talking about it at every camp, but I think it's going to be different for everybody. For me, it was always I had somewhat of a checklist, right? Back up 3 steps, make sure my line is good, take side steps, make sure my angles are good, set my feet, set my hips. Once I'm there, then my brain would, kind of go on autopilot almost from there. And I could just see a ball, hit a ball, because all my pre-work had already been done. So that was kind of what gave me the confidence to go be aggressive, and kind of make that same swing. Other people might be a little bit different. And I think I see a little bit of, everything, a full spectrum, so to speak, training 150 guys. So that's kind of where it's, as a coach, like I could see a little, almost like a therapist, right? I don't talk about anybody else, but I get to see it, kind of everything that's out there. And I would say, what I did worked for me, but it may not work for somebody else. But yes, the mental game is huge. I think that, I compare it to golf a lot. Golfers, it's how do I swing and not think about technique and just swing? But when I'm on the practice range, I'm trying to work technique, from dusk till dawn. So like I think there's a fine line between trying to get inside your own head and just kind of letting your body just naturally do what it does. So that's kind of always the inner battle, the game within the game.
Absolutely, Coach. Thank you for the time. I won't keep you any longer. I know you have a busy life. You get to coach, but I'm pretty sure you probably have to work too, since you were out of town last couple of days. And I appreciate your time. And any time that you've got new client local to the Chattanooga area, please let us know. Come on, talk about it. We welcome you anytime, and thank you so much for taking time for us.
Oh, absolutely. The pleasure is all mine. Everybody looking forward to the season this year. So we'll be, I think we're going to a few games. So hopefully Tennessee can pull out a few wins, beat Georgia, and let's go win the SEC.
You know what? I've already called it, Coach. I already called it. We beat Georgia in Knoxville. So I'm just going to end on that remark. So I appreciate it.
All right. Randall, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you all for listening to this special interview with Coach Aaron Medley, now of the Tennessee Vols, former kicker. He has promised to come back to visit us again, and I believe we'll have him back the next time he's in the area. I'd love to ask Coach Medley about kicking in Bristol at the Battle of Bristol, and some of his experience as a player. But if you're a parent and you have a young person that wants to be a kicker, I cannot recommend the James Wilhoit Kicking Academy enough. I appreciate you listening to this special interview. Of course, we had part one on Beyond the Booth, and we kind of had some feedback issues. So we'll have part two on that show next week. But thank you for taking your time and watching and listening to this so important interview.